Hello everyone, welcome back to our discussion on the different types of learning. In today's session, we are going to discuss about the type which is called as learning set learning. So this is closely related to insight learning and seen especially in animals which especially in primates. So animals learn in this learning set learning. Animals learn how to learn or learn to improve its learning. So improvisation, what is learned, comes under what is called as learning set learning. And this involves a set of strategies or principles. And this type of learning is also called as win, stay, or lose shift. That means when an animal is learning something, if the learning causes a positive impact on the animal, that will stay, and that is what is called as win stay. And if that particular learning or that particular process results in harm to the animal, or which is not having any effect or a positive effect to the animal, it will not repeat it. That is what is called as lose shift. So it shifts the strategy and it moves to another type. So for example, when if food is hidden under an object is found by an animal, and that particular object is having a particular shape, for say it is having a particular shape which is a circle, and now the animal, what it does is that it will continue to search similar objects. And that is what is called as win stay, because in the first trial it searched under many boxes and it found food under a circular box. So it found food in a circular box. As a result, it will repeat that particular process. That means it will be directly searching on for food under those boxes which are circular, and that is what is called as win stay. So when it gets a positive feedback in that, it is repeating that particular process or what is being learnt. And if it's failed to find food in the next process, in the next experiment, what we do is that we are not keeping the food under a circular box, and now what it does is that it will change the strategy and start looking for or start looking elsewhere. And this is called as loose shift. That means if it failed to attain a particular stimulus or a particular feedback, like food in this case, what it does is that it will be changing its strategy, and that is what is called as loose shift. And another type of learning which comes under what is called as learning set learning, or you can compare it with what is called as loose shift, and that is what is called as learned helplessness. That is, if an animal is faced with a problem it cannot solve, it will ultimately give up. It learns that it cannot solve the problem. The example of this is that if a dog is put in a cage which is locked and it is provided with a shock, the dog first tries to escape from the shock vigorously, but it finds that the shock is not being reduced and it does not have any means to get out of the cage. So, what the dog does now is that it will ultimately give up. So, after giving up, even if you open the door, the dog will not try to escape. That is what is called as learned helplessness. So, this is a type of learning which is called as learning set learning. Coming to the next and another important type of learning which is called as imprinting. So, imprinting is also called as childhood learning, which occurs in a brief critical period in the early life of an individual. The learning lasts for the rest of the animal's life. It influences the whole behavior of the animal, and it provides and this insight learning provides the attachment or the basis of the animal attachment to the mother. This expresses itself in the animal's capacity to socialize and its sexual behavior. Imprinting was extensively studied by or extensively researched by Conrad Lawrence, and in one of its experiment, what he did was that. So we'll first try to see this video and come back. So this is a video which shows the experiments of Conrad Lawrence and his experiments in ethology.
Of all life's wonders, few are more fascinating than watching the young, how they first learn of the world around them. Each individual is born with built-in behavioral patterns. Some of these must be developed, learned by experience. What kind of food to eat, what dangers to avoid. Young lions are taught to hunt, young gulls how to land against the wind. In all animals, scientists now believe that the learning process depends upon a combination of factors: innate knowledge and learning from individual experience.
So here we are going to see the experiments which were done by
In Germany's
Conrad
Bavarian
Lawrence.
forest, young wild geese respond to an echoing call that has signaled them since birth. They fly not to the call of another goose, but to that of a man, Conrad Lawrence, renowned pioneer in the science of animal behavior. For more than 30 years, Dr. Lawrence has literally lived with flocks of birds, trying to understand their life and their world, how they learn, and how they are shaped as individuals. Here in this animal society, Lawrence has discovered greed,
You can see that
jealousy,
they are responding
and
to the
aggression,
sounds, and
loyalty,
this is because of
and mating relationships that
inside
last a
learning.
lifetime.
So you can see that he's making some sounds which is attracting these birds.
The work of Conrad Lawrence gave rise to the Max Planck Institute for Behavioral Physiology at Seewiesen. To this renowned woodland hideaway, scientists from around the world have come to study a variety of animals. But most of Lawrence's research still centers on the wild geese. Now it's springtime. The goslings are hatching. By the constant chattering, the young learn to recognize the voices of their parents, and the adults begin to know the sounds of their young. From the beginning, sound is a critical part in the life of the wild goose. Instinctively, the young cluster around the first adults they see, and so learn to identify their parents by sight. They are their protectors, teachers, and guides throughout the first months of life. Accepting as parents the first beings they see is part of the phenomenon known to scientists as imprinting. The look and the voice of the adults are indelibly etched on the young
You can
animal's
see
mind.
that the young ones are
And what
following
is
the
once
mother.
imprinted can
And
never
this
be
is because
erased.
of imprinting.
It is the beginning of their education, the primary stepping stone of life.
So here, what happens in these wild goose is that these particular individuals or these particular young ones, what in their when they hatch out from their egg, there is a particular period which is called as critical period, which lasts for some hours, and in that particular critical period, the moving object, the first moving object that is seen by these gooselings will be recognized as their parent, and they follow them. And this is a law of nature, because in the wild these animals will be seeing their mother or father in the wild during as and when they hatch out, and because they see their parents and they get imprinted as it is their parent, what happens is that they tend to follow them. As a result, the dangers will be less and they stay protected. So this is why such a type of learning has been evolved in animals, and it is mainly for protection and also for learning, because by following the parents they learn where to go, how to hunt, etc. And this is seen in most of the animals which show parental care, because parents teach them what to do and what not to do.
Life. In a sterile-looking incubator, much of Lawrence's
So
fascinating work has
here
its
you are going to see an experiment in the next session where Lawrence students, they are uh, going to prove the process of imprinting in the lab. In this particular experiment, what this researcher is doing is that being imprinted by the normal wild parents, what they do is that they collected the goose eggs, and they are incubating in an incubator. And what she does is that when during the last stages of incubation, she produces, or she takes the egg and she produces some sounds, so that the young one which is inside the egg, which is hours for ready for hatching, hours before the hatching process, the particular gooseling which is inside is responding to the sound, thinking that, or at the hope that the sound is of its mother. And what they do in the lab is that rather than showing a wild goose as their parent during the critical period, the particular researchers, they show themselves, or they will be handling the young ones during the critical period. As a result, these gooselings will be considering these humans as their parents, and they will start following them. And their experiments, or the experiments of, that's why in the first or the foremost of the video, when you saw that when Lawrence was making a sound, they were gathering, because those gooselings or those gooses were being imprinted when they were young by Lawrence. And now in this particular case, they are not only imprinting to animals, whatever moving object they see, because in the wild, as I said before, they will be seeing their parents. But in the experiments, they could prove that it is not only animals, whatever moving objects they see, or the particular pattern what they see, they consider, or that gets imprinted in them. So what they did was that in various experiments, what they tried to prove was that in one experiment they showed the boots of the particular researcher, the plain boots of a researcher, moving around them. As a result, they got imprinted to the boots, and whenever the researcher wears the boots and is walking along, they will be following them. And in the next set of experiments, what they did was that on the boots they covered it with different patterns. One was with the dots, a yellow paper with dots, the other was with stripe, etc. And what they found that they are getting imprinted to that pattern. That means if you are imprinting a particular set of gooselings with a dotted cloth on the boots, they will not follow a boot which is having stripes or striped cloth. So that particular pattern, that means imprinting happens not only or during the process of imprinting. What you can see is that during that particular process of imprinting, it is not that it is recognizing the sound, only the sound, etc. The particular young ones, they will be recognizing the sound, they will recognize the color of the parent, the shape, etc. So all these are recognized by or imprinted by the young ones. And they have also shown that rather than just appearances like color, then size, etc., sound also plays a major role in imprinting. That's why you can see that when the mother makes a sound, the young ones are responding to it. So imprinting gets stronger when it is accompanied with sound. So now we'll see this experiment.
begin. Another group identifies its mother by polka
So this
dots.
is by another researcher. He is being imprinted by those gooselings, and which is having dots. So
Still another by a zigzag
by a
design.
zigzag line. So this is another group.
And for one group, mother is a pair of striped boots on a pretty young blonde named Christine. Now the different groups of goslings are brought together.
So they are checking
Until
whether
now, they have known only each
they
other
just
and their own foster parent.
recognize the other one as
The
their mother,
power of
but
imprinting
they
is
do not
revealed.
mix
Not a
up
single gosling strays or
the
is
recognition
distracted.
or imprinting.
They cling to the individual on whom they had been imprinted. There is no confusion, no problem distinguishing their own foster parent.
When all the three broods are together, they do not
Part of
make any
Lawrence's work is
confusion.
devoted to gaining
The ones
insight
which is
into the social
imprinted will
order of the
follow that
geese,
particular brood's
how they
example.
relate to one another, and how they find their station in life. It begins in part through inheritance. They will be influenced by the mother's rank.
This is what is called as
One
the
student in the
experiments which was
background
done by
acts the more dominant, the
Lawrence
aggressor.
and his students
Her
to prove
outstretched
what is
hand is
called
like
as
the threateningly
imprinting.
stretched neck of a goose. Her goslings, too, stretch their necks and attack. Christine.
So that was what we called of imprinting. So Conrad Lawrence recognized such a type of learning and have done such extensive research on imprinting. In one of its experiments, Lawrence divided goose eggs into two groups, as we saw in that particular video. One group was incubated by the mother and soon started to follow her after hatching. The second group hatched in an incubator and started to follow Lawrence. Even if both the groups are isolated in a box for several days after hatching, and if they are reintroduced to the mother, only the one group which was already imprinted with the mother will follow her. The others will be waiting for Lawrence. So Lawrence was the first to name this particular phenomenon as imprinting. So it was found that imprinting in birds happen 12 to 17 hours soon after hatching. So this type of imprinting between the mother and the young ones is called as filial imprinting. And it is how the animals learn to recognize their mother or their parent. So this helps the young ones to discriminate between familiar and novel objects. Birds are recognizing or imprinting with the help of the shape, color, and size of the model which is used. Ducklings imprinted to a particular object will not follow another one. That's why we saw when one group of gooselings was imprinted with a dotted boots, the other was imprinted with a zigzag line, and whenever they are shown both, they only follow the one which was earlier imprinted. It was also reported that if a moving object also produced the sounds, the imprinting is severe or even stronger, or the bond is even stronger. That's also what we saw in that particular video. The particular researcher who is making sound, so that the young one is also making sound, which says that they both recognize each other. So this imprinting is not a passive process, it is an active process, because an active involvement of the young one is needed for imprinting. So the knowledge gained by filial imprinting. So this imprinting is very essential in animals, because the knowledge gained by filial imprinting is later used by the animal to recognize its mate, because to recognize its own species, filial imprinting is a must. If filial imprinting does not occur correctly, that will result in selecting or in a process which is called as they do not mate with their own species, etc. And this particular process, or this particular phenomenon, where because of filial imprinting the animal is recognizing its mate in the conspecific, is called as sexual imprinting. So in nature, the newborn see their parents first. If the parents are lost, they get imprinted to their conspecific, which is nearby, and they see during the early childhood. So if the young one is imprinted to another animal, they will try to mate with the imprinted species. That's why we said that filial imprinting is very essential to identify its own species. So this accounts for the reason why zoo-reared animals do not breed in captivity. So it is a known fact that the animals which are born in the zoo, they do not mate, or they do not give rise to offsprings. The reason is that in such cases, imprinting occurs to their caretakers, which are humans. As a result, the young ones will be recognizing humans as their mates. And this is the reason why, even though if they are given, or even though they are provided with a mate of their own species, they will not breed in captivity. So another important feature, or important importance of imprinting is that this imprinting or this causes what is called as or this is important in social behavior or socialization of animals. In some examples, where children who are brought in isolation between the age of 2 to 6 years, human children will be shy and introverts, and this particular syndrome is called as deprived syndromes. And this imprinting, as we said in the case of man and the other, fishes also show type of imprinting, and that has been experimented in salmons. Salmons are imprinted with the order of the waters of their home stream, which helps in their legendary migration. In mammals, filial imprinting is based on color, shape, sounds, and odors. In mammals, after the young one is born, the mother is seen to lick the amnion or the amniotic coat, and this aids in imprinting and creates a mother offspring bond. And this is what is called as imprinting, or the process of the particular phenomenon or the type of learning which occurs during the childhood and during the critical period, which is called as the critical period. The learning is called as imprinting. So with this, we come to the end of the different types of learning. So we discussed about the first one was habituation, followed by sensitization, and in associative learning we discussed about the classical conditioning, operant conditioning, which was followed by taste aversion, and the cognitive learning, the three types, latent learning. Then we had imitation, the type which where animals try to imitate their parents or other animals. And the last one we discussed was the we discussed about learning set learning, and the last one and the most important one, which is imprinting. So with this, we come to the end of the discussion on the different types of learning. Thanks for hearing.